So flying a drone can be stressful, right? Like there's so much to know, especially for beginners. If you're just getting into this hobby, you just got your first drone and you're not quite sure about all of the information that you need to have. Like sometimes it's hard to even have fun because you're worried about crashing it or you're worried about doing something wrong. And what I hope to do with this video today is to give you some information, a few tips that will help kind of ease that anxiety and make flying your drone enjoyable. And if you guys like this video, let me know, because I want to do more of these over this summer, because there's still a lot of people getting into this hobby, especially this time of year. The weather's finally getting nice and you want to get out and enjoy this hobby without being stressed out. So let's get into these tips today and see if I can help you out. Hi everyone, welcome to 51 Drones. My name is Russ. Now most everything I'm going to discuss today in this video has to do with DJI drones, but the concepts should transfer to almost any brand. So the first thing that I want to discuss is the procedure when it comes to landing your drone. We talk a lot about how to fly our drones, the best camera settings, and all sorts of things like that, but nobody really talks about landing them. Now, most DJI drones and others as well have something called precision landing. Okay, a couple things that I want to talk about for precision landing. Number one, your drone needs contrast to get that precision landing location. What that means is if you're on like a solid surface, your drone's not going to have enough contrast to know exactly where it took off from. So you need to have contrast. Like I probably have enough contrast right here with the straw and the dirt around here, but the best thing you can do is get a landing pad. I know a lot of people don't like landing pads. Like people that have been flying for a while say they're a joke, but I don't think they're a joke, especially for new beginners, because you need that contrast. So this one's actually from Freewell. Freewell doesn't make these anymore, but Cymic makes these, and it's exactly the same as this one. It's $15. I'll put a link for it in the video description. The other thing, to get the proper contrast, you have to go up to at least 7 meters for your drone to capture that contrast below. Otherwise, it's not going to be accurate when it comes back home. So make sure that you go up to at least 7 meters, and then pause maybe for a little bit and then take off. The other thing that I want to tell you about is when you take off, like let's say I'm standing right here, and the drone's going to capture like me and the shadows as part of the contrast when it takes off. And then let's say I'm standing far away. Let's say I get away from the landing zone and I land. That's not going to have the same contrast because I've removed myself, I've removed the shadows. So you want your landing area to be relatively the same as when your drone took off. For the most part, it's going to get pretty close, right? But let's say this is a really enclosed space and you're landing and you're going to be stressed out, okay? So try to keep your landing zone the exact same as when your drone took off. That way it doesn't have to work so hard to figure out where exactly to land. All right, so now I'm gonna show you what happens if you don't go up to at least 7 meters for that precision landing. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna take the Mini, I'm gonna fly off right away. I'm not gonna go up and hover a little bit to let it capture that contrast. So first we'll just take off and we'll fly straight ahead, okay? So we'll just go out a little bit ways. We'll go out to about 150 feet. And then I'll hit the return to home and let's see where it lands. I'm gonna stay right in the same location so it has the same contrast when it gets above us and comes down. So we're looking at about 6 feet away, and 6 feet is huge, especially if your landing zone is limited. So now let's go up and let it hover for a little bit at 7 meters. I'm actually going to go a little bit higher. Let it hover for a minute, not a minute, a few seconds, and then take off and hit return to home and see how it comes back. Okay, so I went up to 30 feet. I'm just gonna let it hover for a second. All right, let's go ahead and take off. Same thing, we'll go out to the same distance. All right, and let's hit return to home and see how it does. All right, not perfect, but 1 foot is better than 6 feet, right? So make sure you let it go up a little bit to 7 meters or higher, let it hover, and then take off horizontally. You'll feel so much more comfortable if you have to hit that return to home button. Now, I recommend always flying your drone back home manually, mostly because it's also an opportunity to improve your flying skills. And I believe it's important also to have manual control of your drone when it's the most vulnerable, and that's during the launch and during the land. But one thing to know, if you're not familiar with it, is when you decrease altitude to the launch point, your drone is not going to continue down all the way to the ground because of those downward vision sensors. It will always pause to make certain that the landing zone is clear and safe. Now, this pause can be pretty frustrating for new pilots because it can be a little bit sketchy, especially on a windy day or if your landing zone is restricted. Now, some people actually recommend covering the bottom vision sensors, giving you more control while you're landing, but I strongly advise against that to avoid crashing violently into the ground. My best advice for new pilots is to practice launching and landing several times, like 20 to 30 times in a row, to get used to that pause. And then also do it in a wide open area so there's less risk. And then one other thing, also understand that even after you hold down that left stick and the drone begins to, go down this final few feet, you do still have position control. So if you ever need to fine tune it as it lowers down, if you're in a really tight area and you have to move it over a little bit, or maybe there's a weed that you just noticed that you don't want a propeller to hit on, you can still control the drone as it's dropping those last couple of feet. Just know that it does take a pretty steady hand and a ton of practice to do that because it's really fine motor in those last 2 feet of lowering down to the ground. The most important component, arguably, of any drone is the battery. And there are a couple things that every pilot should understand. Now, first, DJI batteries and most others don't like to be at either end of the voltage spectrum. It's unhealthy for them to be either fully drained or fully charged for too long while in storage. And that's why most batteries have a self-discharge feature or battery management system, where after about 5 days or so, they begin to auto-discharge. Now, keep in mind, if you don't know this, when they do their auto-discharge, they will warm up a little bit. So if you happen to open up your case or your bag and you pick up one of your batteries and it's warm, don't be alarmed. That's totally normal. But anyway, that's why they're called smart batteries. But for the most part, you can trust that the battery will know how to take care of itself. But if you really want to extend the life of your batteries for as long as possible, it's best to store these between 30% and 60% capacity. Now, I try to keep mine at around 50% as much as possible. It doesn't happen every time, but I try to do that as much as I can. And that means when you're done flying, what you want to do is you want to plug in your charger and charge your battery up until there's about 2 solid lights. It can be a little bit below that, it can be a little bit above that, but 2 solid lights means it's about 50%. And then put those batteries into storage until like the day before you're going to fly again, pull them out and charge them up all the way. Now, how do you know if a battery should be removed from your rotation and recycled? Well, an obvious sign is if the battery is swollen. And the best way to test that is put it down on a flat surface and try to wobble it. And if you are able to wobble it, that means that it is swollen and you should probably recycle it. But a better way to determine your battery health before that happens is to examine the voltage of each cell and look for discrepancies in the voltage between the cells. Now, you can find that information in the Fly app or the Go4 app by clicking on the battery icon. Now, right here is one of my Air 2S batteries. And as you can see, there's about a 0.02 voltage difference between the 3 cells. Now, these small discrepancies aren't a big deal, but if you notice that voltage difference suddenly increase or even increase over time gradually, it may be time to consider taking this to the recycling center. So speaking of batteries, when it comes to charging your drone batteries and your camera batteries out in the field or on a full day trip or something like that, what do you use? Most of the time I use this one right here. This is the River Pro from EcoFlow, and it's a portable power station that gives me about 12 battery charges with my Air 2S. And then I also use the River Mini on occasions that I need even more portability, because you can just throw that thing in your backpack and hike for days. Now, EcoFlow designs some of the best built power stations on the planet, and they have the largest variety of models for any use case, from the highly portable River series like this one to the more robust and powerful Delta series. For instance, the Delta Max is the ultimate solution for uninterrupted power supply, for unexpected home outages and emergencies, and also it's great for off-grid camping excursions. This beast can power items that require up to 3,400 watts. All EcoFlow units can be charged by AC, DC, or solar, and with their extreme charge technology, they can be charged up to 80% in less than an hour. All units can also be monitored and controlled from anywhere in the world with the EcoFlow app, and they have the best warranty in the business. So go ahead and click the link in the video description to find something that's going to work the best for your family safety and also to power your favorite hobbies. Thanks again to EcoFlow for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to the tips. So I'm going through and I'm editing this video and I'm like, how many times did I actually say the word contrast? Way too many times. So I thought, let's make a little giveaway out of it. All you have to do to win this River Mini from EcoFlow is down in the comments, tell me how many times you heard me say the word contrast in this video. And then also tell me where you're from, because I always want to know where you guys are watching from. Also, if you get a comment from, looks like it's from me, it says contact me through WhatsApp because you won, that's not me, that's a scammer. I will never ask you to contact me through WhatsApp. So ignore those, please. Thanks to EcoFlow for sponsoring this video and this giveaway. I'm going to try to do giveaways on all of my sponsored videos. And in order to know how to be eligible to win something, you have to watch my sponsored spots. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, related to landing procedure is the return to home set point. When you first turn on your drone and your controller, after a short amount of time, you should hear a prompt.
The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
Now, one thing that not enough people do after they hear that prompt is actually do what it says. You should always do this to verify that the home point is set to where you are launching from. Otherwise, if the drone happens to initiate an auto return to home, but for some reason the location lock was wrong, you might find your drone flying miles away from you. And this actually did happen to me one time with my Mavic Pro a few years ago. I hit the return to home because the drone was behaving erratically and it started flying away. Now, thankfully, I just canceled it and it stopped and I flew it home manually. But just know that it's pretty important to verify that the home point is actually where you are expecting it to be. Don't trust that voice prompt. Get into the habit of always double checking that. And also, it's sometimes a good idea to check it on the map before you hit the return to home button. I know sometimes you may not have time to do that because you just want to hit the return to home button in a panic. But if you do have time, it's a good idea just to bring up the map and make sure that your home point is set, because sometimes you forget, something goes wrong. You can never be too sure. Redundancy is key. So the last tip that I have for you today is a real quick one, but I want you to know it because even now, after 5 years of flying, I still sometimes forget to make sure that I have enough space on my micro SD card before I take off. I've gotten better at remembering to put the card in the drone before I leave home, but I'm not so good at checking how much space is actually on it. Then I'll find myself in a location trying to capture some amazing footage, and I suddenly realize that I only have 43 seconds of storage space left. So what if you do forget to check it and you're out of space in midair? Don't worry, it's okay to click on the album button while in flight. Your drone will hover and you can take a minute to view the files that you don't need anymore. Hopefully you've already transferred them to your computer or your tablet at home and you can free up some space right there on the spot. The bottom line is, don't be afraid to leave the camera view screen. Be confident in your drone, but also keep that visual line of sight. Hey, speaking of keeping visual line of sight, one thing that you can do to increase the distance that you're able to fly your drone is to put a strobe on top of it. Especially with all these new mini drones coming out, like they're really hard to see when you get further away. And one way to increase that distance is to put a strobe. I got a Lume Cube strobe here that I use on my Mini 2 at all times. And even on bright sunny days, it increases the distance that you're able to see it. I also use the Firehouse Arc 5. I put that on my Air 2S and I fly with that all of the time because it does help you see that drone further away. So I'll put a link in the video description for both of these. They're both really good strobes and a relatively inexpensive way to increase that visual line of sight distance. Believe it or not, people have been flying remote things without camera view for several decades. Now, if you don't want to delete anything, then you better hope that your drone has some internal storage space available and enough of it to capture what you want. I do recommend transferring all of your files to your computer right away when you get home, when you're done flying. Put it in the computer and transfer it, put it back in your drone, and then delete everything off of that card. That way you don't have to worry about it next time when you're up in the air. If these tips were helpful today, go ahead and click on that like button. That does help out the channel quite a bit. Subscribe for more content just like this. It's going to be a pretty amazing summer here on the channel, and I can tell you that you're going to want to be here to see all of it. Oh, and comment below, what are some questions that you have as a new or a relatively new drone pilot? I would love to make more quick tips videos like this, but I want to know what you are all having difficulty with. I do thank you for watching the entire video today. I really appreciate that. Go ahead and watch this video right here next, because I made that one just for you. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and as always, fly safe and fly smart.